Sunday morning, December 7th, 1941. For the past 2 years, the forces of Nazi Germany under command of Adolf Hitler have waged a devastating war across Europe. And on this morning, the surprise attack by the Imperial forces of Japan on America's Pacific Fleet stationed at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, came as a profound shock to the American people and led directly to the United States of America formally entering World War II. The Americans rallied to the call. St. Augustine became a training center for the United States Coast Guard. This building was constructed to house 5 Coast Guardsmen stationed at the lighthouse to stand watch for enemy vessels. The men took turns standing watch on top of the tower to mark all passing ships and planes, then radio their description to the naval wireless station. While not on tower duty, the men patrolled the beaches on foot with trained dogs and on horseback and in jeeps looking for potential enemy landing parties. The small building across the access road is a 3-car garage that was used for maintenance of those jeeps. Both civilians and those serving in uniform are trained to protect the First Coast. Adolf Hitler was so impressed by Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor that he immediately called Rear Admiral Karl Donitz, Nazi Germany's submarine fleet commander on the northwest coast of occupied France. He was to attack the American East Coast immediately, the busiest and richest shipping lanes in the world. Donitz called his attack Paukenschlag, or Operation Drumbeat. He would strike the American homeland as quickly as the strike of a kettle drum. This was to be a series of quick-time attacks near the U.S. coastline intended to terrorize and weaken U.S. resolve. 6 Type 9 long-range German submarines were able to cross the Atlantic and had orders to start coordinated attacks on January 13, 1942. Operation Drumbeat was over by August of 1942, but by that time 609 vessels were sunk, 24 of them off the coast of Florida. Nearly 3.1 million tons of vitally needed supplies were sent to the bottom of the ocean, and 5,000 merchant marinemen and professional sailors lost their lives. It was called America's second Pearl Harbor, and very few people know it happened. The most famous attack was the sinking of the Gulf America. In April of 1942, the SS Gulf America departed Port Arthur, Texas, with a cargo of 101,500 barrels of furnace oil. Passing Florida en route to New York City, she stopped a zigzag running pattern designed to avoid torpedo attack by Nazi submarines. U-123, that would claim 42 vessels during its time on the U.S. Atlantic coast under the command of Captain Reinhard Hartigan, torpedoed the Gulf America on April 10th off the coast of Jacksonville. The explosion was heard all up and down America's first coast. 19 of the 48 men aboard died during the attack, and the vessel took 6 days to sink. These attacks led to cities along the coast calling for windows to be blacked out so that boats could not be silhouetted by the Nazi submarines against the illuminated shoreline. This included dimming the light in the St. Augustine Lighthouse from a 1,000-watt bulb to a 50-watt version. For 4 miles inland, lights in businesses, in homes, and in automobiles were dimmed. From 1929 to 1939, before the outbreak of war, the Great Depression left both men and women looking for jobs. Often, women had better luck than men finding employment. Lower-paying openings for housekeepers, nurses, and secretaries made some women the breadwinners. Local families relied upon fishing, gardening, bartering, and recycling to get food and necessities. With the New Deal legislation of 1933, President Roosevelt promised relief, reform, and recovery. These programs led to social change for African Americans and women around the country. Here in St. Augustine, one man, Frank Butler, was able to open the Palace Market in the predominantly African American neighborhood of Lincolnville. The market offered household items, clothing, and food to the residents. Under FDR's administration, African Americans were able to find opportunities in the United States Army Signal Corps. They played a significant role during military operations, establishing lines of communication and allowing for more efficient and effective mobility of different divisions. In 1941, Congressman Edith N. Rogers introduced a bill allowing women to perform non-essential Army jobs. The Women's Army Auxiliary Corps, known as WACS, was born in May 1942. The Coast Guard created the SPARS from the Coast Guard motto, Semper Paratus, meaning always ready. During the war, over 350,000 women served in uniform performing administrative and medical duties. Here in St. Augustine, women and families who could not serve in the active military did their part as well. Many volunteered for civil defense, a civilian patrol to defend against enemy attack in towns and communities. Women in the home rationed everything, recycled everything, planted victory gardens, and allowed Florida children to collect over 30 million tons of scrap metal for the war effort. Many women of all ethnicities flocked to factories to build ships, planes, tanks, jeeps, and anything else that was needed for the war effort to replace the men who had gone off to battle. Mary Bell Parks, known to her friends as Billy, served her time as part of the World War II Ambulance Corps in civil defense of St. Augustine. She continued to serve long after the war as the Corps recorder until the Bay of Pigs incident in the early 1960s. Donald Pearson, known as Pappy, received his training here as well. He served as a coxswain for the Coast Guard and was in charge of small watercraft and all personnel on board. Donald was very involved in the community, as were most of the sailors who served here. He wrote letters home every chance he could and told his family about everything he did in his life. In 2004, Donald donated many of his objects and letters to our museum, some of which, his manual, uniform, and dog tags, are on display in the exhibit. St. Augustine also gained notoriety as the favorite spot for rest and relaxation. Servicemen from Mayport Naval Base in Jacksonville and Army personnel training at Camp Blanding 45 minutes to the west would descend on the small historic community by the hundreds on weekend leave. They would gather in clubs, sample local cuisine in restaurants, or head to Henry Flagler's famous Ponce de Leon Hotel, now Flagler College, to dance to the smooth rhythms of the Coast Guard Band. The band featured the singing talents of a local girl, Bobby Hatchett, and their music was broadcast across the region. It is even rumored that a local dish was made popular throughout the United States by servicemen serving here in St. Augustine during the war. They took news of it back to their families and friends after the war was ended. It was called fried shrimp. After completing their training here in St. Augustine, hundreds of men and women of the United States Coast Guard were sent to duty stations all around the globe to do their part for the war effort. It was Coast Guard personnel who drove the Higgins boats, the landing craft that would take troops to the Normandy beaches during the D-Day invasion of the 6th of June, 1944. The true number of casualties may never be known. Accounts have the number at 85 million, making World War II the deadliest conflict in human history. The United States had over 16 million serving in uniform, 248,000 of whom were Floridians. 300,000 Americans were among the casualties, and 3,000 of those were Floridians. This exhibit takes the story of the war through 1942, and it is only the beginning. Yet this small white building still stands north of the old Lighthouse Keeper's quarters on the grounds of the St. Augustine Light Station, a silent testimony to the dedication, the determination, and the sacrifice of the men and women of the United States Coast Guard. Semper Paratus.